The other day, I received a phone call that I think is the greatest phone call I have ever received. It was from a brother, and he had a hard time saying what he wanted to say, but he finally got the words out, and he said this: "I think I've been a horrible brother my entire life." I just sat there and listened to him try to explain what his heart was trying to process and get out. Here's the truth. This brother has not been a bad brother his whole life. But it wasn't his fault. The way he was treated by people, the way he was treated as a little boy, all those factors in his life basically turned him into someone who was incapable of being a good brother. But as I listened to him talk, it was the most beautiful words I think I've ever heard someone say, which is simply acknowledging, "I think I've been a horrible brother." Let's face it, in life, when things go wrong, our first perspective is to blame someone else. We hide behind our own insecurities and hide behind our own pain in some way. We cope to deal with the frustrations we have in our life, but then we point a finger somewhere else. We become fueled by our anger towards others at the expense of our own freedom. We become a person who has someone else to blame, but we're just not capable of loving people the way we were designed to. As I listened to him tell his story, I was reminded of a simple thought. Every one of us have been that brother. At some point, every one of us towards other people, not just our siblings, but every one of us to people have been the horrible brother. Maybe it was our spouse. Maybe it was to our kids. Maybe it was people that we worked with. But at some point, we have all been that brother. The danger is that we'll never acknowledge it. The danger is that we will never recognize what we have become. Life happens to all of us. I think we have all been hurt by people. I think we've all been wronged by people. But we have also wronged people. We have done wrong to people. The danger is not what's happened to us. The danger is our response to what's happened to us. The good news is there's a different pathway. Instead of spending our life being fueled by the anger and the bitterness of what someone was to us, instead, we can be set free to go love the people in our life. But I think it's impossible to love well the people in our life while we're still holding on to the bitterness and the anger from people in our past life. You see, as long as we hold on to the anger of what somebody was to us, it holds us back from being who we want to be with people today. So the anger that we have from our past towards people, are we going to let it continue to be the anger that we hold toward our future? Are we going to pull all of that frustration and pain and let it just continue into our future? I believe the pathway is to stop looking at what someone did to us and instead do a very difficult thing, which is to acknowledge, what have I become because of me? What if instead of using someone else's actions toward me as the reason why I've become what I've become, what if instead I take ownership of my life and realize, wait a second, I'm like this because of how I chose to respond because of what they did. But I can choose to respond differently. I don't have to keep on responding the way I responded 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I can choose right now to respond differently. And oftentimes the pathway forward is to stop pointing the finger at someone else and instead look at ourselves in the mirror and simply be willing to ask ourselves, what have I become? Why did I choose to respond to the pain of my life this way? Why have I become the person who treats people the way I treat people? These relationships in my life that aren't going well, to be willing to look in the mirror and say, am I the reason why? All of these questions can seem impossible to ask oneself, almost cruel to ask oneself. But what if it's the pathway to freedom? I spent so many years in my life frustrated with people. I really cared about people. I just thought they didn't like me. When I finally faced myself, I realized my problem was not what people was ever doing to me. My problem was how I was choosing to look at people. I was judging how people were responding to me. Instead of just loving people and caring about people, I was always judging what they thought of me. When I took honest inventory as to who I was as a person, it set me on a pathway to freedom. I didn't have to live with dysfunctional relationships. I could have powerful relationships. So as you think about people in the past who have hurt you, the truth is the more that you hold on to that bitterness, that poison is going to change your perspective and impact all the people in your life currently. And the people in your life right now will have to pay the price for what someone did to you 8 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. For the sake of all of the people in your life now that you want to love, what if you look in the mirror and say, what about me? My life and what I have become, what is it about me? This kind of self-introspection. It won't, I find that it doesn't lead to massive guilt, but it's a pathway to freedom. I was in a prison one day talking to inmates, and I asked the question, how many people are living the life they want to live? And most people said, well, no one really is. And when I ask that question to anyone, inmates or not inmates, most people say, well, no one's really living the life they want to live. There was an inmate, his name is Toulouse, and he stood up in that conversation, and he spoke like a prophet. He spoke like a king with such seriousness. He spoke with authority, but he also spoke like a man on his deathbed because he was so intense at what he was saying. But he stood up in that room and he looked into the eyes of everyone in that room, and he simply said this, you will never live the life that you were made for until you face yourself. He had been in and out of prison so many times, and finally he was brought to his knees to face himself. And now, even though he's still in a prison, he lives like a free man. I think about so many years in my life, I lived in a prison of my own making, a prison because I wouldn't face myself. I was always ready to look to get fuel from someone else outside of me. Oh, someone mistreats me. Someone's overlooking me. Someone's judging me. Someone thinks bad things about me. Always looking to be fueled by someone outside of me that doesn't treat me the way I want to be treated. I was always looking for that kind of fuel. What I was really doing is creating a prison around my own life. But when I faced myself, I found freedom. And you can too. Thanks for watching. Go take on the day.